I gained over 60 pounds of muscle following a few key principles. Now obviously, this isn't one of those fake 6 months transformations. We're talking about my starting body weight, when I first started training at 130 pounds soaking wet, to now my current body weight of 195 pounds. I started training seriously at 14 years old, and I reached my peak physique at about 29 years old. I'm currently 34 years old at the time of making this video, and in the last 5 years, I've pretty much maintained my physique. But regardless, we're going to talk about the principles that I lived by during this time period gaining all this muscle, and exactly what I did that got me here today. And although I've literally tried everything you can think of over the years, I've narrowed it down here today to just 4 basic principles for you guys. The first, and one of the most obvious principles, progressive overload in the gym. I was lucky enough to have this mentality just come naturally to me. Right from the start of my lifting career, my thought process was always, if I focus on progression, I'll get bigger and stronger. Since day one, every single gym session I went into with the mindset that I have to lift more weight, I have to perform more reps, and I have to continuously perfect my technique. I remember walking into the gym for the first time bench pressing 95 pounds. I was so weak, I couldn't even balance the bar properly. My first goal was simply to get up to lifting the big boy 45-pound plates. And after just a few months of training, I was now bench pressing 135 pounds for 10 to 12 reps. And what do you know? As a result, my chest got bigger and I developed more muscle overall. Now, I experimented endlessly with all different types of training plans, going from high volume to low volume. I was following my favorite bodybuilders' routines. I was always trying to find that extra edge. And although all of these programs were very different, the one constant in all of my training was always that mentality. Focus on progression. That progression mindset eventually took me to a 2-plate bench, then onto a 3-plate bench, and at my strongest, 385-pound bench press. Now, that's almost a 300-pound increase on just one single exercise. But that same process and same mentality was applied to all lifts. My squats, my rows, my pull-ups, my overhead press, and even my isolation work as well. I was never stressed about finding the perfect training volume. I was never trying to fine-tune my exact RPE in the gym. I was never overly worried about all the small details. Now, these are all very important things, don't get me wrong. But the point that I want to drive home here is, if you're progressing in the gym, everything else will fall into place. Principle number 2, consistently feed the machine. There were long, extended periods of time spent eating 3,000, 4,000, or 5,000 plus calories consistently for months on end. And in the initial stages of going from 130 pounds up to 170 pounds consisted of no time spent dieting. During that time, I wasn't trying to look aesthetic or stay lean for social media. In fact, the time period we're talking about was pre-Facebook days, although I did have MySpace. I was trying to get bigger, and all of my efforts were going in one place. I wasn't trying to gain muscle, but also have abs. I was eating, training, and getting bigger and stronger. Now, I implemented a few diet phases after that initial 40 pounds were gained. And ultimately, I went on to competitive bodybuilding for years after this phase, cycling between a low body weight contest weight of 165 to 175 pounds to a high off-season weight of around 190 pounds. But the initial years where I built the foundation of my physique, those were all spent on nothing but focusing on gaining muscle. Principle number 3, prioritize rest and recovery. The first 5 to 10 years of training, I dreaded taking time off from the gym. I wanted to train 7 days per week, 2 to 3 hours a day. During that time period, there was literally nothing I wanted to do more than bodybuilding. But unfortunately for me, or fortunately that I caught on, if I trained too much, too often, and didn't take rest days, I would regress. And it was around the time that I was in the intermediate stages of bodybuilding. That's when it really hit me hard. As much as training was a priority, proper sleep, stress management, and even days off from the gym were as an important part of the plan as training was. And this one principle had the largest impact from taking me from a basic average gym lifter, someone with an impressive physique at around 185 pounds, to reaching my peak physique at 195 pounds. As a smaller or weaker lifter, I could train 6 days per week, recover, and come back stronger. But as a stronger, more advanced lifter, I had to rest properly to eke out that last bit of progress. Now, the last principle, but definitely not because of importance, time. The biggest element in my progress has been time. In fact, the average lifespan of someone in fitness is roughly 3 to 5 years. Literally. I've been in this game since 2003. I can't tell you how many times I've seen guys dive headfirst into fitness. I'm talking about competitors, guys making careers out of the sport, guys going on PEDs, and even guys just adopting the bodybuilding lifestyle. Most of them go hard for 3 to 5 years. And after that time, you literally never see them inside a gym again. I can't tell you how many guys I've seen come and go, but it's always the ones that not only make this a lifestyle, but actually do it for life, who are the ones that get the best results. Most people look for the magical plan to get results. Today, this is worse than ever. People always want to know the optimal way to train. But the problem is, even if you find it, there's nothing optimal about training hard for a few years and then completely quitting. And the truth is, the best plan is the one that you can perform consistently over long periods of time. At 20 years deep into lifting, I'm not concerned about finding a new training plan to build the next 5 pounds of muscle. I'm focused on training appropriately for another 20 years. And if you stop looking at the last 3 months of training, but instead look at what progress you've made over the last 3 years, you're gonna start to see how things really come together. And if your goal is to build the most muscle possible, don't get distracted by all the noise. Apply the basic principles laid out in this video, and most of all, give them time. And if you want the exact training programs that I personally recommend to build muscle using proven old school bodybuilding methods, all my old school mass game programs are down below. And as always, if you want to see more of the best original bodybuilding content just like this, make sure to hit subscribe.